Jared Goff and the Lions, Colin. Interesting stat found by our staff. Jared Goff played his 69th game with Detroit since getting traded. He's now played 69 games with the Rams and the Lions. He talked about it, and we got the stats in a moment for you.
I heard that when I did my radio thing earlier this week. I was like, oh, wow, that's cool. I know that was coming up. But, yeah, I think it's I've certainly become a Lion now in my career. When I look back on it, it's going to be majority Lions and hopefully a lot more majority as we go on. But, yeah, it's been a fun journey here. It's been fun to grow into and to be a part of this city and to now, I guess, flip the scale in that way is cool. Hopefully a long time. I don't know. Yeah, it's hard to answer, but yeah, I think a long time.
The good thing for Jared Goff, he's not an overly mobile guy, but in Los Angeles, he had Andrew Whitworth and a good run game and McVay, and then he goes to Detroit. They have a great offensive line, an unbelievable run game. He's a guy that needs protection. He needs a run game, and then he's excellent when he has both. So if Jared Goff would have gone to Houston and dealing with their O-line and their lack of run game, Jared Goff would not look like this. And that's not a knock on him. I've been a huge fan. But sometimes you do get breaks in life, and the fact that he got mostly in L.A. good O-lines and a great coach, and in Detroit, really good coordinators, unbelievable running back room, and a good O-line. There's a way Jared Goff needs to play, and there's, Mahomes can win with bad O-lines and no receivers. That's not Goff.
Okay. Patrick Mahomes has never won with bad O-lines and bad receivers. Never. Not once. Show me when. I'll wait. Anyway, CJ Stroud isn't looking great in Houston either. So I don't, let's just talk about Detroit Lions. Before we get into it, Lions fans, please do not forget to subscribe. I am trying to build an absolute amazing community here. Lions fans, rise up. I asked you guys before to please subscribe, to please watch the full length of the video, and you guys did, and the views went through the roof. I'm trying so hard to keep trying to grow this channel to the best of my abilities. And when you guys show up, this is what happens. This is the power that you guys have to just cause videos to go vertical so we can build a real community here, have real discussions, real conversations, and firmly root ourselves in the sports talk world. So please don't stop. Please don't stop is all I can ask for right now because it's amazing. But I think it's great that Jared Goff is now firmly rooted as a Detroit Lion. I think he fits Detroit so well, which is why, every quarterback needs to be protected and needs to have a run game and needs some receivers to throw to. The more videos I make and the more teams I watch and the more quarterbacks that I watch and the more I listen to people who know football way better than I do. Even just watching a casual game with Troy Mann commentating, the more and more you realize is that pretty much everything is the same for every single quarterback, for every situation, for every coach, for every team. It's you need to have a good defense, you need to have a good O-line, you need to have a good run game, you need to have some receiver. Your quarterback needs to take care of the ball. They can't hold on to the ball for too long. It's just the same thing for everyone. That's why I take issue when we pretend that Patrick Mahomes is out here winning games with no all-line and no receivers. When does that happen? We saw Patrick Mahomes this year with no receivers, and he couldn't win a game. He's struggling. The only game that he was even remotely able to win was against Russell Wilson and the New York Giants, who are obviously an absolute mess. So what are we inventing here? And a year that he had his worst receivers were, in 22 or whatever. Travis Kelce had the greatest season of his NFL career, was top in every single receiving category, when including wide receivers as well. And he had an elite O-line with a 75% pass block win rate. So I don't understand what we're inventing here. Then if you want to say we didn't have a great O-line in 24 or 23, one that's not true. Well, we didn't have great receivers in 23. And it's that's not true either. Also had an elite defense that was clearly the engine of that team. So we don't have to twist things, because when we do it, then makes Jared Goff look more fragile in that regard. Now, would I agree that on a spectrum that a Josh Allen, a Patrick Mahomes, etc., can be more resilient when you don't have a great O-line or a great run game and whatnot than a Jared Goff? Absolutely. Absolutely. I fully believe that Mahomes and a Josh Allen and a Lamar, etc., can be more resilient to the issues that an offense could face throughout a season, throughout a career, than a Jared Goff. But I just take issue that when we present just a casual conversation like we're trying to have right now about Jared Goff, it's just like I don't see it. I don't see why that's the conversation. I don't see why Colin jumped into that right now. I mean, honestly, it just threw me off. It's like, hey, isn't this pretty cool that Jared Goff has now played 50% on from both LA and Detroit, and now he's officially going to play more games from Detroit. And it's like, yeah, Goff is pretty lucky because of, and it's just like, wait a second. And yeah, in the NFL world, Goff is lucky because he went to two great franchises. You know, he got to play for McVay and the Rams, and now he's with Dan Campbell and the Lions, and he's been able to have a ton of success. And right, he could have been traded to a team like the Carolina Panthers and the Cleveland Browns and, you know, any of these other messy organizations and just not really have a lot going on. And it's just like, yeah, so he's been lucky in that regard. But, you know, to me, it's the same levels of, you know, luck that Mahomes got to Kansas City or Lamar to Baltimore or Jalen to Philly and, you know, Stafford to LA, right? Stafford could have been traded to Detroit to Carolina or something. But yeah, I was thinking about the Lions earlier today and yesterday, and I was thinking about it. It's so interesting to me because obviously they're favored by just, you know, a boatload in this game. And so this game should be a pretty easy, convincing win. And I imagine typical Lions fashion, they like to just really roll these teams. And for me, I said this all last year, like when you're a team as great as the Lions, like when you really dominate a bad team, like it really means very little to me because I know you're a great team. I know you can win games. And whether you beat a bad team by 35 or beat them by 10, it just doesn't mean a lot to me personally. That's just how I am. Jared Goff throws for 500 yards and 8 touchdowns against the Bengals. It'll be cool because I just used a pretty extreme stat line, but like it's not like, you know, it just only matters so much to me. But I do think it's pretty fascinating that for the Lions, it was this combination between just not playing well against the Packers and having 2 new coordinators. If you didn't play well against the Packers, right, you just played exactly how you did, but you still had the same coordinators as last year. People would just be like, you know, it's week 1, tough game, divisional game, just a little weird. They're not in rhythm yet. No. How many starters actually played in preseason? You know, you'd have that whole game. And but they didn't, right? They didn't have the coordinators and you had that game. So then it was like, see, they're not good. They lost their coordinators. They lost their juice. This team's not good. And now if they won that game, even with the 2 new coordinators, you know, with 2 new coordinators, it would say, wow, they beat the Packers. Tough game. It would have been a little bit harder to gauge how great the Packers are because part of the reason why people thought the Packers were great because of how they played the Lions and the Commanders. And so people started to get really like, whoa, this team has arrived. Whoa. So I think if the Lions ended up beating them in week 1, there wouldn't have been as much momentum of like, wow, this Packers team is a top team in the NFL, but they still would have recognized, hey, this is a really good team. Depending on how well Jordan Love played that game, if he played well or played poorly or played okay, it would probably have been a whole conversation about, is Jordan Love the guy? Did the Packers make a mistake? You know, is Micah really able to help this defense? Like it would have been an interesting conversation. But the point that I'm trying to drive home here is that all because of losing coordinators and then having a rough game week 1. It's just people are looking at the Lions through a foggy lens. Through a foggy lens where you're just like, what do I actually see here? And last year when they got off to a little bit more of a sluggish start, which I talked about last year. And again, some Lions fans gave pushback because I didn't, they won the game against the Cardinals, and I didn't love that game. And they had an uneven game against the Rams. I think that was week 1. There was a couple games that were like, just a little wonky, and I was like, this team should be so much better, just waiting for it to happen, et cetera, et cetera. And then they would beat a really bad team, and I would be like, that doesn't mean anything to me. And I could understand fan bases like, well, what do you want to see? And it's just like, just higher quality football against better competition, right? Like you don't even need to win. I just need to feel that the momentum there is back, and they were able to do that. But you were able to give them so much more of the benefit of the doubt through that season. Even a game that I didn't necessarily maybe love, like against the Cardinals, you could still see the greatness there. You just needed to kind of tie it all together. And it's just interesting to me because when you do lose, when you lose coaching and you then lose to a division rival and you just don't look good in a game early on, it becomes almost difficult to like shake that off right now. When on the flip side, the Packers were just skyrocketed to the top of a lot of people, and then they just lose to the Browns, and they tie the Cowboys in a game that they were supposed to, crush. That dominant, hey, we're a top team, got shook off very quickly. Very quickly. I mean, I still think people believe that the Packers are a great team because I think they are. But people were ready to be like, whoa, this team is the #1 team. They're ready to win a Super Bowl right now. Now people are like, are they ready to win a Super Bowl? Do they have the experience? This is still a young team trying to figure out, like, they shook that off right away. And yet the Lions still can't necessarily shake, like, hey, if you thought we were a dominant team last year and the year before, if you thought that we were a true bona fide Super Bowl contender over these last couple of years, just because we had, not our best showing week 1, we were replacing our coordinators. Yeah, we got, some a different O-line and whatnot, and a defense that needs to find its way a little bit more than maybe within the last couple of years. But like, if you thought we were a great team before, we are still that great team. And now we just saw the Rams, who I think is a great team. They did not play a good game by any stretch of the imagination. Any stretch of the imagination. That was a bad game for them against the 49ers. And so when you look at this Lions team and you put it all together, when we were trying to look at all, hey, who do we think the top teams are? It's like, okay, you got the Ravens, you got the Rams, you got the Eagles, you got the Bills, and the Chiefs were a little bit tough because of their injuries and suspensions, but we expect them to be, up there with everyone else. And you're like, okay. And it felt like the Lions were kind of just cast to the side. And now, if you want to say, hey, you know what, these coordinators still need to prove themselves. The O-line still needs to kind of get a little bit better. The defense needs to get a little bit better, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, I would just say, every single top team right now, you could say, oh, the Eagles, they need to get their offense a little bit better. The Ravens, they need to get their defense, the Bills, they need to get their defense a lot better. The Ravens, I think, have probably even just officially dropped out of the top, conversation. If you want to add the Packers in there, you say, okay, well, they need to learn how to win some of these, these games. They need to know how to close out the Browns. They need to know how to run the Cowboys out of town, et cetera, et cetera. And you would put the Lions in there and say they're clearly a top team with everyone else right now. With all the other top teams, you can't pull them down. You can't say, yeah, I think they're a great team, but I'm going to put them under this team just because. And it's just like, I don't know what the just because would be, So I just think it's a little bit of a bummer that we're seeing them play the Bengals, because like I said, that game will mean nothing to me unless they lose, because then obviously it's like, okay, well, that's interesting. But if they win by 14, or if they win by 44, this team has been around long enough where and coached well enough that there's just no takeaway for me for this game. And I'd love to continue to see barometer games with this Lions team, but I do think the conversations around the Lions right now are pretty interesting, especially like I said, coming off of a game like the Rams and the 49ers. 49ers weren't getting a ton of love. The Rams were getting all the love. I think Colin had just recently put the Rams as like top 4, top 5, top 3, whatever it officially was, on his herd hierarchy. And now they just lost to the 49ers to M. Jones and a whole bunch of injuries. And it's like, okay, well, if you thought the Rams were a top team, then what does that make to Detroit Lions then? Like, it's just it's always fascinating when you continue to see other teams play throughout the season, right? Like, I would have been more comfortable mainly because of the trust that I have with Stafford and McVay, that you would say, okay, I could see why the Rams are going to be ahead of the Lions. I think I had them equal on my list in terms of, because I do more of a tier than a number. But now when you just see the Rams lose, you're like, okay. Like I could make the argument that the Lions should be ahead of them or above them, or if they, if I watch the Lions and the Rams play each other in the playoffs, if they were going to play each other, my instincts would say, okay, Stafford, McVay, I could understand why they're going to get a little bit of a nod there. You're going to trust them potentially a little bit more, especially because we've seen them in playoff games. We haven't seen this new coaching staff, with Jared Goff in the playoffs, et cetera, et cetera. But now the way how things unfolded, you'd be like, I don't know. I'm not comfortable saying that right now. Like I'm not going to just automatically assume that that this Lions team can't make a huge stance here and get after it. So I don't know. We're starting to get more and more clarity as this season unfolds. And it's pretty interesting to me so far just to see where all of this is landing right now. But Jared Goff, he needs an O-line. He needs a defense. He needs a run game. He needs great coaching. He needs wide receivers. He needs special teams. He just needs those things. Otherwise, he can't be a quarterback in the NFL. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about Jared Goff and the Detroit Lions? How you feeling about them so far? How you feeling about this game against the Bengals? You nervous? Is this going to be a catch game? Is Jake Browning going to ball out? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment. So whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. Please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all generally feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.